How did a group of warring factions turn into the oldest empire in human history? Hello, I'm History in 5 Minutes, and this is the story of Predynastic period of ancient Egypt. Real quick, I just want to say, if you're watching this video to study for a test or something like that, and you hear a word like predynastic, it's easy to be like, oh my god, how am I going to remember this? But the word basically means before the pharaohs and before one kingdom ruled over Egypt. Anyway, let's get on with the video. Egypt started out like most other places at the time, with groups of settlers starting to build cities with the goal of farming and making life easier for themselves. But Egypt had something that most other places at this time did not have: extremely fertile farmland. This was caused by the annual flooding of the Nile, bringing a substance called silt, which could be used to create extremely rich farmland. This would happen every year when the Nile would overflow for up to 6 weeks. The ancient Egyptians at this time had learned to collect the silt in mass and could also tell the relative time period of when the Nile would flood. But living near this river was not without risks. The ancient Egyptians at this time could tell when the Nile would flood its banks, but it was difficult to tell how hard it would overflow. This was a problem because if you had a house near the Nile and the flooding was particularly bad this year, your house could be completely destroyed in the mess. Nonetheless, Egypt continued to grow and thrive. Eventually, different groups started to emerge. These groups would trade and fight with each other for centuries. It's believed that around this time, a man named King Scorpion might have ruled over most of, if not all, of Egypt, but there's no clear evidence to support this. Eventually, the tribes fought with each other until only two remained: Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Their names were ironic because Upper Egypt was in the south while Lower Egypt was in the north. This was because of the flow of the Nile running south to north. For a while, both groups grew in unison, but eventually, because of increased trade and the urbanization of Upper Egypt, it grew far more powerful than its northern counterpart. And so for decades, Lower Egypt became slowly weaker, while Upper Egypt became slowly stronger. Besides small skirmishes, it looked like both groups would just stay to themselves. That was until one ruler of Upper Egypt changed the course of Egyptian history forever. Meet Narmer, otherwise known as Menes. There's a common misconception that Narmer and Menes were different people, but recent evidence has proven this wrong. Menes was the name that his family and close friends would call him, while Narmer was the name that people who didn't know him personally would have called him. For the sake of simplicity, we're just going to call him Narmer. Now that we have that out the way, let's get on with the video. At this point, Narmer had amassed quite a large army, and in turn his kingdom dwarfed Upper Egypt. Because of this, Narmer wanted to annex Lower Egypt into his growing empire. Even though he had amassed quite a large army, Lower Egypt could still be a threat to him, and so he sent them a message asking them to join him. Lower Egypt, while being weak in comparison, were fine on their own and declined his offer. Narmer was like, "At least I tried," and proceeded to raid and destroy Lower Egyptian cities. Lower Egypt, realizing that they were in a major pile of shit, likely decided to surrender to Upper Egypt in around 3100 BC. Narmer then married the daughter of the Upper Egyptian king to seal the deal, the equivalent of a spit and shake in their time. After this, he created a crown called the Pichet, a combination of the Upper Egyptian Hedjet and the Lower Egyptian, why do they gotta do this to me, Deshret. During his rule, Narmer would create the first hieroglyphic writing system and one of the first writing systems in the world. This would be instrumental in learning about the history of ancient Egypt. He also vastly improved Egypt as a whole and turned it into a local power in the area. Narmer also introduced the first of about 30 dynasties, where the sons and daughters of the old Egyptian rulers would become the new ones. I don't know why I put that in the script. You probably know what a dynasty is, but the more you know. But little did Narmer know, his kingdom would soon become one of the most powerful empires in human history. I put the links to some videos and articles about Predynastic Egypt in the description, so if you want to learn more, please go watch them. YouTube thinks you're going to like this video on screen, or you can watch one of my more recent videos. It's up to you. Also, because this channel is fairly new, I don't really have a specific direction that I'm going in, so if you want me to cover one specific country or nation, like ancient Greece or ancient Rome, or the founding of America, something like that, please just comment it down below. I'm really going to be swayed by the audience here on what I want to do next. Anyway, that's about it, and peace.